Hello, welcome back. My name is Seljan, and I have a couple slingshot tutorials for you. Not just TTF, but mostly about TTF, but also about slingshot shooting in general. So I hope you can find a few tips that's useful. And let's just start. So first of all, I don't really like aligning the bands. So the top band is always covering the bottom one. It's really hard from a perspective standpoint to try to cover the top one with the bottom, because mostly you will see the top one anyways. But what you can do is, if you are looking for a slide offset because you want to change the horizontal point of impact, then you might want to alter the center of the shot. Okay, so the center of the shot is always placed here. So solution one, if you're canting the slingshot, you can alter the center, and then you can alter the point of impact. That's solution one. How to do it? You can look for the edge of the bands and try to align them. So for top edge, could be aligned to the bottom one, and that will create a slide cant. That's one option. Another option is if you are looking for the hand reference in the tip of the slingshot and you try to make it horizontal. That's another option. Another option is if you are offsetting the band, and as you see, I have a slide offset here at the bottom. Okay, so this one is, I have a center mark, but I don't really use the center mark, only for measurements. But this one is slightly offset. Okay, so I hope it's clear on the screen. So that's my solution, because I like to keep the frame horizontal here, and this way, because I don't see the bottom band anyways, because this one is quite close to my eye, then I don't have to worry about this much. There is a ratio. So in my experience, at about 10 meters, if I alter this one with 1 millimeter, that will end as a centimeter offset at the target horizontally. So it's a 1:10 ratio. That works for me, so I like to use this number. If none of these solutions are working for you, you can still change the reference point itself. So you might want to choose the edge as a reference point, or you might want to alter your mark on the band. If you wish, if you are using a mark anyway, or you can actually create multiple dimples. It's up to you. So the most important thing is find something that's easy to use and you can easily repeat when you're shooting TTF and you have to adjust the horizontal alignment. Okay, another common question is how to make sure that the bands are centered and the ammo flies straight. There's the good old trick to use a mark, a simple line that helps you to align the bands. It is a good option, but for some folks it doesn't work that well, because first, if you're using a different colored band, it might be barely visible. It can also fade, and sometimes you don't have the light conditions to use this. And this is a little bit uses too much conscious power. So I have a different solution that I learned from Randy Knapp, can opener, and his idea is just brilliant. There's nothing else, just you pull in the bands, and let me just alter the angle of the bands to make it more visible to the camera. So when you pull it out at the end, okay, so it's visible now. If you have a barely slight move in the pouch hand, you can just find the great angle, and now you have a great visual feedback on the alignment of the bands. It works well if the band is right below your eye. You will see it instantly, okay? The benefit of this movement is you can make it subconscious. So during the pull, I was showing in another section of the video, during the pull you can automatically pull to the eye and make these micro movements to find the perfect spot, and then rest your hand at the anchor point. Okay, so it's a great option, and this way you don't have to use the mark. the mark still has a very important benefit, because if you are using clips like this one, you can accurately position the bands, and it's quite important once you are reaching for top accuracy. There's nothing wrong with rep and tuck, and it's been told many times you can be just as accurate with rep and tuck, but it is just easier. When I'm shooting TTF, I like to use a cheek bone anchor point for the following reasons. Because when I'm pulling TTF, the draw, I always like to imagine that I have a rope in my hand and I'm pulling that rope through a hole, and I like to drive it straight, and it's much easier if I just pull it out and I put my head on that rope. This way the force is quite a straight one, it's directed, and the forearm is in line with the draw. Let's talk about the grip. I like to use thumb support, but for many reasons, but the first thing is the leverage. When I'm closing my fist, you can just check it that I have really narrow wrists. So when I have the fist closed, this is the outer side, this is the kind of a bony structure point here, and there's a quite huge leverage. If you have a different fist to wrist ratio, then you might want to use a pinch grip or palm support or whatever, but for folks who has a somewhat similar ratio, might be a good idea to try a thumb support the following way. So when you are just using a thumb support and you're using a wide thumb support, then you are also increasing this leverage. So for this reason, you will get the best results if you're pulling back your finger and try to move the center of the force closer to your palm, and this way you can drive the force through directly to the forearm. And how to do this? So let me just grab my slingshot, and this is a kind of basic thumb support. Okay, this way, this angle is quite wide. So now my hand is a little bit flat here, but when I'm pulling this finger back and I'm applying some force, you will see that this one is driven straight to the bone. So this is the thumb support style I like to use. Just a side note about gripping force, gripping power. Of course you have to have a good grip, but strength doesn't mean you have to apply to that force. It is much more about control. So when you are gripping and holding the slingshot, you're not trying to squeeze it, you're not trying to choke it. Actually, the more force you apply to the grip, it will alter your shot, because muscles can activate each other. So neighboring muscles will pick up the neuromuscular input, and that will just alter the overall output of your force production. So when you are actually squeezing hard or too hard, it will activate, of course, the forearm muscles, and that will activate the other muscles as well, and you don't want to use this chain. So the best thing to do is to use the least amount of gripping force that you can do, and focus your flexion to the tricep area or to the shoulders, because shoulders and tricep will add the stability for the shot. Let me share a theory about shooting. Shooting has two main parts. The first part is the conscious part, is the preparational part. So when you are loading, when you are just obtaining stance, and you're focusing, and the second part is the actual shot, the aiming process and the release process. Why is it important? Conscious part should be outside of this subconscious shooting part, because you want to spare your brain power, your energy to performing the shot itself. Now, why is it important? There is a time window for this maximal performance of your brain capacity. Okay, so these movements should be performed within a couple seconds. Okay, you don't have the time for everything. Now, for this reason, you might get better results if you split off your shooting cycle. So first you have the loading, you're obtaining stance, then you're just having a pre-stretch, focusing on a target, and then lifting up, drawing, aiming, and shot. Now this drawing is a kind of a transition from the conscious part and reaching to the subconscious, and then just releasing the shot. There's instinctive or aimed shots. It's always a debate. Mostly it is a debate of meaning of the words. In this case, I say subconscious. Why? That means you have an engraved, a wired habit for the shooting. If you have a wired habit, that means you practiced it 1,000 times and more, then you don't have to forcefully think of the shot. It's not instinctive, but some people may say it's instinctive. It's up to you. It really doesn't matter. The most important thing is you practiced the movement that much, you can make decisions without thinking of making a decision. So this makes a huge difference. When you have the conscious part, when you are performing the loading and everything, then you can think it through. Am I standing right? Am I feel the wind? Is it okay with the sun? Can I see the target? So you can think this through. And every conscious thoughts are leading up to that peak moment when you're actually aiming the shot and you're releasing. But when you're aiming and releasing, that has to come from the guts, from the belly. That is instinctive, subconscious, habitual, automated, whatever. The most important thing is it has to become a natural state of yours. It is just a flow state of yours. Break it down. So let's talk about the stance first. As you see, I have pretty basic shoes. You don't need any extra cushion, okay? If the shoe is too soft, that's usually not working. So even a sandal is much better than a padded shoe. You want to distribute the force towards the front of your feet, okay? You don't have to stand on the balls of your feet, but you want to feel the toes are gripping as well, okay? So when you feel the toes are start to grip, then you have a quite stable stance, okay? You don't want to lift off the heels from the ground, so you don't want to do this. It is just a slight movement at the hips. If there's a slight movement, there's a kind of a hinge movement that you can use. So many shooters, if you're standing like this, you have a chance it will be a little bit harder to stabilize the movement. But if you are tucking your hips a little bit, as you see, this is a tucking movement, so I'm just performing this, and also my knees will come forward because of the tucking. That helps a lot with the gripping of the feet. If you have a tendency to take a deep breath in each shot, that's not always a good option because you will lift up the center of mass of your body. So if you like to shoot this way, like giving a good breath, everything is up high, it's much harder to stabilize. But if you keep your ribcage relaxed, then it is a little bit easier to keep the center of mass lower. Even if you have a little bit of belly, you can push it out and just relax the shoulders. You don't have to worry about that much. Actually, that belly can help to maintain this stable pose. Okay, so, and there is a little trick. Please try to keep that in mind. You don't want to elevate the center of mass. So when you're lifting up your hands, don't do this automatic breathing in, okay? And now you ruined everything, okay? So just keep the body calm, keep the belly out. You don't need any extra air, just breathe normally. And when you're lifting up the hands, don't elevate the shoulders too much. Don't pull up everything in the back. You want to keep the center of mass as low as possible. There are two more things that can add to the trunk stability. One thing is, if you have some barbell training experience or martial art experience, you might recall the feeling of a barbell squat when you're just pressing the air, keeping the abdomen tight, and then you can lower to the squat. That type of movement can help to engage the core and give a better connection between your rib cage and the pelvis and the hips. This is one option. If you have used kettlebells and you know the kettlebell swing is somewhat similar, so you are just performing the breathing technique and how you can flex the abdomen. That works perfectly with this type of trickery. Now the other thing is about trunk stability is if you have a slight rotation. So what does that mean? When you are standing absolutely perpendicular to the target, your rib cage and your pelvis is in line. But what happens if you are tilting about 30 degrees, 30 degrees more to the target? So imagine that my target is there, so I have a slight angle, and now I'm twisting my torso, I'm twisting my upper body, and my hip remains there. Now I have an angle between my rib cage and my pelvis, and that slight angle, that rotating movement will add a lot and will increase the flexion of the abdomen, and that strengthens the connection. So it is a slight twist between the upper body and the lower body, and it strengthens the connection of the entire body and the spine, and that might help to add stability. So it might work for you too. Okay, another typical question is about both eyes open or just one eye. I like to keep both eyes open while focusing on a target, and I'm squinting with my right eye, and my left eye is the dominant, and I'm holding in my right hand. For this reason, my left eye is always open, and this one is squinting when I'm reaching the aiming process. But till that, I try to keep it open. I'm getting better results with this method than keeping both eyes open, especially if my eyes are not horizontal. You have to know that you will get the greater sense of stability when you have both eyes open and your eye level is horizontal. So optimally, you may try to keep your eye levels horizontal as much as possible and keep both eyes open. But when you are shooting in a canted way, so when your head is tilted, when you're pulling below your dominant eye, something like this, then you might want to keep only one eye open and the other eye, the non-dominant eye, slightly closed. The two parts of shooting. First, the conscious part. I have my stance, shoulder width, feet are parallel, I'm tilting the pelvis a little bit, lifting the belly out, I don't lift my shoulders when I'm pulling, and loading in the slingshot, achieving the grip. Now I have my grip. I like to apply a little force, so I'm pulling the band slightly, arms stretched out, and looking for the target, And now this is my conscious part. This is the preparation part for the shot. So I spend a couple seconds just focusing on the target, and I don't let off my eyes on the target. So, and then I start pulling, but I try to keep my shoulders relaxed, belly out, a little relaxed knee position, and I'm looking straight to the target, and now I'm pulling, and I try to do not move the head or anything, and I try to pull right at the aiming. I don't want to modify it. If I'm accurate with the draw, if I'm accurate with the pull, I can land right on the target, and that helps a lot. In some cases, I like to pull a little bit higher, like this, and just letting it and lowering it, but I never do something like starting from low and then trying to lift up to the aiming position. That's not really working. Another option is, just let me demonstrate from the front. So here, slingshot is loaded, arms stretched out. I have a pre-stretch, and I don't modify the grip. The grip is 100% same at this lower position than in the higher. I'm just working like a robot, so I'm pulling it up, and then I'm ready and I can release. So that's how it works. Or another option is, you're lifting a little bit higher, achieve, and lower. That's another option. Or it might work for you is if you are curving. So you're lifting it up, starting a little bit off, reaching the stretch, and then from the side you are drawing a curve and then just pointing in to the center. So that works too as well. Now, when you are making this pre-stretch, it's a good idea to strengthen your arms by activating the tricep muscle. Okay? Just make sure that your elbow is locked out and you're pulling and lifting your arm, and the only movement you make is happening here at the shoulder. You don't change anything on the elbow, you don't change anything at the hand. You don't want to activate the forearm muscles. The only muscles you want to activate is you want to engage the tricep, only the tricep, to make sure that the arm is extended the maximum one, and also the movement is performed here. Shoulder blades relaxed, and then you're pulling, and this is what happens. So you have the position, pre-stretch, you have a good pinch, and then you're just lifting it up and go. That's it practically. There is another mistake in this subconscious part. When you are trying to stop the hand from moving, you will use your conscious power and you will try to redirect the movement. You will try to overwrite the moving pattern. The problem is, if you are already using conscious thoughts, that will be just way too slow for the habitual micromotoric practiced movements. So then your body uses the subconscious information about this aligning, the natural pointing skills, the shots you practiced. It is a knowledge base. But then your conscious mind will tell, hey, I want my shots go to the left. I want my shot, and you try to make a correction. But that correction is not effective enough, no matter what. So in this case, believe in yourself, trust in yourself, and let your body perform this subconscious part. Now, this is one of the reasons why we have this narrow window of adjustments, this narrow window of this peak performance of your mind. To make it easier for yourself, there is a theory, it's called floating the pin. And it's nothing else, just trust in yourself and let the pin, the aiming reference, so that's the pin basically, find its way, because it will do. So you're just making the shot, you have the conscious preparation, and you're achieving the position, and then you're pulling, and then let it float. So if it's not accurate, you don't have to care that much, okay? Just let it float, and in the right moment, then you can release. Okay, about the lanyard, some folks like to use it, some don't. For safety reasons and for stability, I like to use it. I've used adjustable lanyards with a copper stitch in it, at least with a microcord copper stitch. I don't like if it's too bulky, because it just doesn't fit well to the hand, to the wrist. But for more than a year, I like to use a single strand, not adjustable, fixed lanyard on all of my slingshots, because you don't have to worry about adjustments. Even if you are switching different slingshots, for example, you have 2 or 3 models of the same slingshot with the same type of bands, because if you're practicing for competition, that might be useful if you just switch from one to another. It is as tight as possible, and it helps a lot to maintain a fixed position of the hand, and I like the feeling. Now on this particular slingshot, I can use multiple orientations, and I can link to this one from here or across. I like to use this orientation as well, but the favorite is this one recently. But you will see, if you put this advice in practice, that it's quite easy to accommodate this solution. Alright, thank you very much for the attention. Don't forget, conscious part, preparation, subconscious part, aiming, floating the pin. Make sure pulling from the back and not from the forearm or bicep muscle. Always pull from the back. Make it a fluid movement. You don't want to force anything. When you start practicing this, please don't try to perform, okay? At the beginning, try to avoid too much stress. If you have so many things to practice at the beginning, just choose a fairly large, rewarding target that's easy to shoot, because at the beginning the goal is to wire the habits, to make it an easy flow that fits for you. When you start practicing movements like this, corrections, posture, alignment, head tilt, blinking, squinting with the eye, or whatever, it is too much information. So break it down for yourself. 1 week, practice the stance. Not a week, practice the hold, practice the rhythm, and just have fun. When it is stressful, you will connect the emotions with the movement, and you want to make it a simple, natural movement without any hassle, without any emotional bond, without bad wiring. Just keep it a happy moment of your life. Make sure that you're actually enjoying shooting, because it will speed up the whole process. And once you're done with the grounding work, once you're done with the practicing, and you have the work that you put in here, then you can really harvest the benefit of practicing. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time. Goodbye.
You can.
Hello everyone.